Welcome to the Unitarian Christian Alliance podcast, episode 66, Good Counsel, with guests Seneca Harbin, Laura Willenburg, and Alex Waller. I'm Mark Kane. This episode is specifically handcrafted for you if you, and please choose all that apply,
ready.
A, have ever wanted or needed counseling.
Yeah.
B, are interested in the field of counseling.
Maybe.
C, wonder what can happen when people with passion connect.
Oh, certainly.
D, are encouraged when you hear of impactful ministry efforts.
Yes.
E, just enjoy meeting Unitarian Christians.
Oh, yes.
F, you were at the last UCA conference and were so busy talking with people that you neglected to stop by the Christian-centered counseling table.
Yeah, that's me.
Or G, you were hoping Mark would do the test-taking sounds again, like in episode 15. Why I'm not a Trinitarian.
Oh, yes.
Well, you're in luck then. Oh, and this episode is especially for you if you've been excited to hear more news about this upcoming UCA conference. First part of the announcement is that we are looking for volunteers to be on a committee to select locations for the UCA conferences in coming years. We'd like to have maybe a 5-year plan in place so that you can make plans well in advance, plans that include both the date and the location. So, yes, we want the main fall meeting to be in different locations. At the same time, we're close to finished with a plan for other groups to host regional UCA conferences. These are smaller conferences organized by a host group which would provide an opportunity to connect to folks in that region who could drive a few hours for an event like that and who might not fly across the planet for one of the main fall conferences. It's also a chance to get to know these host groups better. Having a 5-year plan in place will make it even easier for groups to plan for regional UCA conferences. We will be announcing more details about the forming of that committee soon. Watch for a post on the UCA website, UnitarianChristianAlliance.org. If you are a member, you'll get that as an email. Stay tuned. Oh, this fall's conference? We will be meeting one more time at the same location as last year, the Lawrenceville Church of God, on October 19th through 21st, Thursday night through Saturday night, just like we did last year. The intent of moving the conference from place to place is alive and well, but we have humbly determined that if the UCA board is involved in figuring out details and plans, the complexity of moving it will be too much. We need helpers who are dedicated to the task, thus the soon-to-come committee request for people who want to help us do this. Since we had a fantastic and successful event in Springfield, Ohio last year, we know we can do it one more time. This will give the future conference committee the ability to focus, not on the next few months of hectic planning, but on the locations, dates, and venues of the coming years. So be sure to sign up on UnitarianChristianAlliance.org to get the emails which will announce the registration for this coming conference, as well as emails about the call for papers. Speaking of papers, the UCA presentations are being released weekly, right now. Already out is Jerry Weirwill's Applying Old Testament Yahweh Passages to Jesus, and Sean Finnegan's The Key of Truth, a Monument of Armenian Unitarianism. We are releasing them in the order they were given, and we're doing it each Friday for the next several weeks. Search YouTube for Unitarian Christian Alliance to find the channel and click subscribe. There's a link for it in the show notes, too. Oh, and after the interview, in the Mailbag, we've got a question about attending Trinitarian churches. We have an update on that podcast project I'm helping with. We'll mention a Christadelphian podcast episode with Levi Gelano, where I was the guest, and more. In the book of Acts, we learned a simple and powerful lesson. If Christians see a need in their community that they can meet, they should do it. They organized together to solve problems, to help people, and they did it by finding people who were gifted and led to do that. And the widows were cared for. Acts 6. Today is a similar story, born of the same spirit of service to our community. A fire lit from love and fed by connecting dedicated and passionate people. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. How about we just go around, everybody just say who they are, where they live, and we'll get to the further introductions later.
Hi, my name is Laura Willenburg, and I'm from Fulton, Missouri.
I'm Alex Waller, and I'm from Dixon, Tennessee.
My name's Seneca Harbin, and I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Seneca, this Christian-centered counseling effort began by a vision from you. So tell me a little bit about yourself and why this was of interest.
I am a strong believer that the Bible is sufficient for all things, and I believe if we turned to the Bible instead of other resources in life, that we would be a lot better off.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with us is it's very difficult for us to receive Christian or biblical counseling from Trinitarians. And for the most part, that's the only game in town.
Yes. How then did counseling and working with others become a passion of yours?
So the vision was set because I run Veteran Support Ministry, and we've run that for several years. And that's a wonderful program. It's in-person group counseling, weekly meetings, but it's veterans only.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Center Counseling got spawned out of that because I had a lot of family members, spouses, other people. They'd say, "Hey, you're that counselor guy. Can we sit down and talk?" And I said, "Yeah, we absolutely can. You just have to enlist in the military. And then once you're discharged, you can come and be part of Veteran Support Ministry."
It was that simple. I see. Okay. You were in the military for how many years?
I served 7 years in the United States Army Infantry. I'm a 6-tour infantryman.
Okay. And then how long had you been doing the counseling for veterans?
We've done Veteran Support Ministry for 3 years now.
Okay.
Very soon after we started doing Veteran Support Ministry, we instantly recognized, hey, there's a lot bigger issue here. Because as much as I love veterans, the only thing that mankind has in common is pain and suffering. You don't have to go off to a faraway land to experience pain, dysfunction, suffering, all that mess.
Yeah.
And so it was very apparent that we needed to provide assistance and help to anyone we could. I started taking training from the Association of Certified Biblical Counselors, ACBC,
Mm-hmm.
and they're some of the most conservative, true biblical counseling that you can get. The problem is they're independent Reformed Baptists.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not one of them, you cannot participate with them in any way. You can receive the training as long as you don't talk too much, but you can't get certified and you can't, actually counsel on any of their programs.
I see. There's a statement of faith that you would have to sign to join them?
Yeah, it's extremely Trinitarian.
Yeah.
And extremely conservative fundamental.
Okay.
Down the street, a big mega church, 7 campuses, 15,000 members. Their entire church, all 15,000 members and 7 campuses, just got their certifications pulled because as of 2023, if you have a female in any pastoral position, you can no longer be with ACBC.
Wow.
So they're pretty extreme fundamentalists, but
yeah.
But on the flip side of that, though, they have the best biblical counseling program ever. They're amazing in what they teach. Here's the problem with Trinitarian counseling. Their foundation is off. And so the whole house is going to crumble. If you really want to get deep with somebody, you need to have a proper foundation, and so that you can walk them through what the Bible actually says.
Okay. You had this vision, but that's not enough to make a counseling group. So what happened?
I had a vision. I had a dream. I wanted to help people. Specifically, I identified the problem that the biblical Unitarian community has nowhere to turn for proper biblical and Christian counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So, as with all things in life, you can choose to be part of the problem or part of the solution. So I said, hey, I want to be part of the solution. I want to provide a resource for people that believe what the Bible says and who love God, but also need some help. We went to the first UCA conference. We met a lot of people that we'd never met before.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Tuggy, Sean Finnegan, the Brown family, Amanda Dunn. We got to meet Kenny and Laura in person for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And we just had an amazing, wonderful time. We planted a lot of seeds at the first UCA conference, and it was a beautiful thing. it was after that conference where the dream really started. And we said, okay, now we've identified the need. Let's provide the solution for that need.
Mm.
And so that's where Christian-centered counseling really got founded.
Okay.
Because of the ties and the connections we've made at the UCA conference and throughout the UCA as a community, we started doing Salt and Light, which is through Living Hope International Ministries. So through the conference, I met Laura in person.
Yep.
And through Salt and Light Study Night, I met Alex.
So, Laura, your background fed right into Seneca's vision. Describe how you've been trained and what you do now.
Going back, I guess I had started a professional counseling program through a Christian university as a traditional graduate student right after college. And I got halfway through that program and it just wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So I ended up not finishing that program and had around the same time met my husband, Kenny, and moved to Missouri, started having a family and staying home with the kids. But a few years into that, I started getting to know different Unitarians from different conferences and things and seeing some needs in our communities, not seeing very many people trained in Christian counseling. Hadn't really met very many pastors that were super trained in it. So I decided to do a pastoral counseling graduate program. And I also honestly liked the idea of, completing a master's. And
so you're completing your master's program and you had yet to actually start hearing what Seneca was up to, right? This is just on your own. Okay.
I finished that program, a year before I even met Seneca.
Okay.
Liberty University has an online program. It's kind of a hybrid of behavioral science and pastoral ministry. So I had been concerned about doing a program that was somewhat of a seminary type program because I thought I would have to sign a statement of faith. And, most of the seminaries are Trinitarian.
Yes.
And probably all of them. So I got on the phone with the admissions counselor and I said, do I have to sign a statement of faith? And they said, actually, no, you're under the School of Behavioral Sciences. So, you don't have to sign a statement of faith to do this program. So I chose that one. It took me 2 years and it is kind of a hybrid of methods from psychology integrated with biblical principles. I did get some exposure to the type of biblical counseling that Seneca was trained in. I ended up finishing that and getting some training in domestic violence. So that was kind of my internship. Then, that was 2020. And of course, I didn't end up really getting the experience I wanted. There are a few people aware that I had a degree in that and was, available to help if someone wanted to talk through and have some counseling with me, but wasn't really able to do much with it until, I kind of met Seneca. We kind of talked about what we were, what we had studied in school, and he was working on a degree and I had finished mine. I didn't think too much about it.
Yeah.
It was quite a few months later, he just called me up and started asking me a lot of questions that seemingly to me, I didn't connect what all these questions were about, really.
Well, I got the dream and I was like, all right, we're going to start this. But there is huge amounts of legality in counseling people. And you can really get hemmed up quick. So I started calling the pastors that I knew. And I was like, hey, who protects you? What insurance do you have? And Sean Finnegan was like, oh, yeah, man, that sounds cool. We really need it. I believe in this. Laura's got a master's in pastoral counseling. I was like, well, I didn't know that. So then I started harassing Laura.
I see.
He asked me a lot of questions. And then finally, at the end of it, I was like, okay, so what is the purpose of, all these questions? He's like, well, I want to start a counseling ministry and I want you to join it with me. Right before that, I'd been feeling like, wow, nobody else is really doing this. And I need some support here.
Okay. So you were sensing the same gap that Seneca was sensing when he made the connection with you. It's like, yeah, this could fill that gap.
Yeah, I did. And I was looking sort of for a venue to do more counseling through, but I didn't know I'm going to have to basically do marketing to get people to be aware. So it really helped at the right timing to get connected and have this opportunity. Okay. So,
but that just makes two of you now who are on board. When did Alex get hooked into this?
So Alex, we were on Salt and Light, and I was pitching it to everybody on Salt and Light. Mm-hmm. I was saying, hey guys, we're building up. I was trying to oversell it. Well, guys, we're really building up momentum. There's a huge need in the community. You know, we've got amazing counselors on our team already. Then Alex approached me, and she was like, hey, you know, I'm probably the smartest one in the room. I was like, oh, would you please join my team?
That was not what happened.
All right, Alex. So catch us up on you.
Yeah. So I am still currently in my master's program to become a licensed professional counselor. Okay. When I originally started wanting to be a counselor, I had no background in that. I was basically just going off of, I felt God pulling me in that direction. I was like, okay, let me just jump in. I didn't want to do anything specific. I wanted just an overall counseling degree because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it or where God was wanting to lead me with it. I didn't want the pastoral because I didn't want to be limited to just in a church. I wanted to be able to go branch out because with your license, you can do Christian faith-based counseling. You just have to be linked to like a faith-based place. So that was kind of where I was wanting to go, but didn't know how to get there. And I hadn't actually heard the full background of what Seneca was doing. I just started internship. I was like, there's no way that I'm going to even jump into something like that yet because I'm brand new.
But then you heard Seneca's marketing and his pitch.
Yes, it just drew me right in. But I was stressed with my internship, and because of my sites, none of them were faith-based. If you don't go faith-based route, you are very limited, and there are so many legalities that you cannot bring up faith at all.
Wow.
So I struggled in that a lot because I wanted to work with trauma. I wanted to do a big broad of things, but I still wanted to be faith-based. So I was asking for prayer over it in Salt and Light, and Seneca called me out in the middle of me saying my prayer request. What was that? What are you doing? We need you. It just went from there.
Okay, so you got is the whole team 3, or do you have like other people too?
So right now there's just 3 counselors. We're trying to add 2 more.
Okay, and you had to go through probably a process to turn it from an idea into something real, like you.
So we had to make it legit. In the state of Indiana, to form a nonprofit, you need a minimum of 3 board of directors. And so I looked out in the crowd and I said, if I could start a dream team from scratch, who would I want it to be? So it was myself, Laura Willenburg, Anna Brown, and Amanda Dunn. That's the board of directors. And then for counselors, we have myself, Laura, and Alex.
Okay.
And while the organization is still pretty small, it's extremely potent, and I couldn't be more proud of everyone's efforts, and everybody does an amazing job.
I want to turn back to what you started to describe earlier, the nature of the counseling, just so people can understand, what would this be like? Why is this different than connecting with a counselor who maybe just works out of a clinic down the street?
So the difference between secular psychology and counseling and Christian or biblical counseling is that we will address the problems and issues in your life biblically. We will walk you through those issues and programs just as an apostle or Jesus would. We're going to get to the heart of the matter, which is sin in some form. And where regular psychology and counseling, you can glean a lot of great stuff from it. They're going to tell you, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? What are your relationships like? And they'll walk you through all that stuff, but they're not really going to address the core issues of, as a Christian, you don't get a day off. You don't get an excuse. Your exterior circumstances don't affect that you have to be the image of Christ to everyone you meet. And that's where the difference of biblical or Christian counseling will come in as opposed to regular psychology counseling.
Okay. Well, Alex, because your schooling was what Seneca is describing, the other non-Christian approach, reflect on the differences, if you could.
As far as mine, from what I'm learning from a psychology background and how your brain works, all of these deeper things, and which work well with like my current job that I do outside of the Christian-centered counseling, which is more secular, and I can't bring faith into it, which is very hard.
Yeah.
And that's where I find that you need that biblical foundation. I think a lot of what I do in my other job is very helpful, but I leave those sessions very defeated because I know deep down they really need that foundation of God. I can't do that with them unless they bring it in first. If a client brings it in first, then I kind of have a little bit of leeway, but still not a lot.
Wow. Yeah. In our current culture, if you recognize somebody has a problem with a lifestyle choice that's actually bringing them down or that's involved in sin, if you say that, because isn't it like becoming ever increasingly popular that what you do is you celebrate whatever's wrong with a person in order to make them feel better, because feeling better is like the ultimate goal? That's the perception I'm getting from culture, that your best treatment is to just make them feel good about themselves, whatever's wrong with them.
Yeah, I think so. When you say, I've really seen this go badly for people, and this is why. And you can kind of do that in secular counseling, but you can also have a reason why, like, there's a reason God tells us not to do this because it really is a bad idea.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you see that sin is like the root cause, you can't target the root cause if you work in just a clinic down the street. But in this counseling, you can talk about those things. People who come to you are also recognizing that is, in fact, part of the process. It's not like you're surprising them with, oh, hey, there's this thing called sin.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice. And they come in with knowing that that's all of our foundation in it. And that's where we're going with it. Mm-hmm. In, my other job, I see a lot of, the majority of the root problems are the sin and what they're dealing with at the time. And I do find, like, even my supervisor, they really stress like illegal behavior versus sin behavior. The sin behavior is not as important. So like if a certain lifestyle that they're living, they almost want you to promote it and be okay with that and like add it into their sessions. And I have to find a way that I don't do that. I don't incorporate that in my sessions. I try to just leave it off the table because I work with kids who get in trouble with the law. And so I try to just stay in that field because I'm so sanctioned by not being able to, go anywhere else with it. So
I could see that would be very, what was the word you used earlier? Draining or something like?
Defeated. I feel very defeated.
Yeah.
And I think there are other aspects to it other than just focusing on the sin. People a lot of times come to counseling with a lot of questions about why is this happening in my life? Even especially hard things they go through. They have, voids in their life. I just don't think secular counseling can answer how to heal that. Not having God in your life, you ultimately can't fix that. Only God can really fix that if they allow him into their life. So just knowing the answer doesn't heal it, but having God in your life does. So they can experience that healing and that you can just facilitate that for them, but also at the same time helping them take responsibility for their spiritual life and the choices they're making, just encouraging that more, that they lean into God and what he wants to do in their life.
Secular counseling can do a wonderful job and it can help a lot of people. And there's amazing research that's been done in that field that we can glean from. But at the end of the day, you can't touch the root of all problems, and that is our hearts. And that's where Christian counseling as a whole makes the big difference.
It makes sense. At the last UCA conference in October, just this last October, 2022, we had a time of meetups where people would go around and talk to different people about different topics. And one of the topics was counseling. And I had somebody come to me after that time and say, we got to talk, and it was very meaningful. Explain how that kind of happened and why that was of value to the people who were there.
Well, the meetups was a new thing, so we weren't sure what to expect, if it was going to be people that were interested in receiving counseling or if it was going to be other fellow counselors that might be interested in partnering with us. So we just kind of came in with open expectations and just started talking to people in the room. And at first it was awkward, and a couple people started opening up, and it was very unplanned and very organic. There were a couple people in there that had very similar experiences, and just by sharing, it was kind of like a group counseling session. I mean, I can't speak from their perspectives, but it seemed like it was kind of a healing experience to know that they were not alone in what they were experiencing, and to find another person who had walked a similar path. So it kind of got us thinking, wow, there seems to be a need for people just to not just do individual counseling, but possibly for group counseling.
Interesting. Seneca.
I walked into it as I'm going to, spread the image of who we are, what we offer, and hopefully we'll get the word out there about Christian-centered counseling. Once we got in the room, it completely shifted, and people were just opening their hearts. And one person would share something, and another person would add a little bit to it, and it turned out to be this beautiful group counseling session. You could feel the weight that these people had been carrying around, these burdens, and you could just see it and feel it get lifted off of them in a short, 45-minute session, and it was a wonderful thing.
Wow. Well, that was the impression I got when somebody came and talked to me. Like, we really appreciated that we got to do that. So that's amazing. When I said, let's do meetups at the UCA conference, I was hoping that it would be organic. There was no real scheduled intentions about it, other than this is something that people are interested in. There's a chance if they got together and talked about it, things would happen. And this was more than I expected. To actually help people at that moment was beautiful.
It definitely did seem like there was a Holy Spirit intervention there. Like it wasn't planned by us, but maybe it was planned.
It was planned
by God.
Yeah. So at the conference then, you guys were a sponsor. So you had people coming by your booth. I presume then you actually met other folks who were like, I might actually take you up on this. This could be helpful.
It was actually twofold, which I didn't see initially, but after the conference, I was able to understand not only were we spreading the word that we were there to help people, but a lot of the pastors of the biblical Unitarian churches, they were saying, hey, we don't have people in our church that are qualified to do this. And now we're a resource for them globally throughout all these biblical Unitarian churches now. They know, hey, there's a group that has a solid foundation and that we can use and refer our people to and trust them that they'll actually receive help.
Yeah, interesting. I could totally see this being a very valuable resource to Unitarian churches all around the world. Yeah, absolutely. So are you going to advertise in the churches now? Put brochures in all of their tract holders?
Once we actually get money, we will advertise a lot more.
Okay.
Right now, it's still the $2 in a dream kind of mindset right now, but I do my best not to advertise for any type of funding at all because I don't know anyone who's doing real great right now. But no, I would love to just to be a resource for pastors and their congregations. And if we ever get to the day that we can do marketing and stuff like that, that'd be wonderful.
So as a 501c3, you're a nonprofit organization. Obviously that, you could be funded then by giving. That's the normal way that these are funded. Do the people who get counseling pay? I mean, now I'm getting down to the kind of nitty-gritty. How does it work? If somebody's hearing this and thinking, okay, so it's a charitable counseling organization. Do I pay per hour? Do I donate? Is it free?
Everything we do is 100% free to the clients.
Okay.
It is our way, the tithe, to the true church, which is God's people. It's our giving back to the community, and especially the Unitarian community. But no one pays anything for anything at all.
Okay. Wow.
The problem with counseling in most situations is the people who need it most are in the worst situation. And so we wanted to make it a completely free resource to provide assistance where it's really needed.
So that means you all have your regular jobs then, and you do this.
We do. And I will say we'd like to have more counselors because we are kind of limited on how many clients we can take on at one time. So, please contact us if you're looking for that kind of opportunity to minister in that way, if you have training.
Yeah. Well, Alex, you mentioned that you each have a different approach. So you now have 3 kind of approaches. Clearly, Seneca would be helpful if somebody had a experience in the past in the military. That would even be super appropriate for Seneca. But just 3 people, it's not like a large selection to choose from.
People tend to want to work with somebody who has kind of experienced the same things they have experienced. With Seneca having that background, I'm sure veterans that have went through that would much rather talk to him than me, who I have zero experience in that aspect. But you find people who just want to work with their gender also. So that can be a barrier if we get several that want just a male counselor and we only have one and he has his regular job and, he can only fit in so many people. Same with female. If we get a lot more female counselors and then just me and Laura have, taken on that kind of thing. So yeah, just having a good variety of counselors would just be very, very helpful, ideal, and beneficial, I think, to the people we're serving.
Well, I hope that, we all have day jobs. We all have a lot of activity in our life. We only get this life at this time to make a difference to others. We can live our whole life only doing our day job, only, paying the rent and feeding the family. Or we can find opportunities to make a difference in other people's lives. So I pray that a few individuals might see this as a perfect opportunity for them to reach out and connect with you. How do they connect with you?
So right now, I'm linked in to receive all the incoming emails. So if somebody either hears about us through a pastor they have, this podcast, our Facebook, or our website, they send an email to christiancentercounseling@gmail.com.
Okay.
And I receive those emails. I take some very basic information. What's the gender? What's the issue for counseling? What is their availability? And do they have a preference of male or female counselor? And that's really the only initial contact I take.
Okay.
And then I'll pitch it to the team and say, this is what we have. This is what they prefer. And this is the issues they're struggling with. Who wants it? And then we kind of internally go through and say, hey, I think this would be a good fit for whoever. And we kind of divvy it up like that. And then from there, I'll forward all their information to the assigned counselor. And the assigned counselor actually picks it up. And from start to finish, that's their baby from then on.
And so that would be the same email somebody who might want to join your team would email you at as well. christiancenteredcounseling@gmail.com.
Yeah. If they feel like it's on their heart and it's something they want to be a part of, but they just didn't know where to go or what resource to use, or they couldn't get certified through their local Trinitarian program, we offer the home to the misfits.
The island of misfit toys. I had this question popped in my head. Unitarian Christians, by nature, can be rather individualistic. I'm going to study this. I don't care what people say. I have to believe what I see in the Bible, even if everybody else walks away from me. And so we're a bit individualist. Yet counseling is where somebody says, I need help. So if somebody was to ask the question, wait, why do I need counseling? I've got the Bible. I've got truth. I'm good. What would be the answer to that question? Why?
Well, I think that God created us for community. When you look at the culture of the people in the Bible, they had people. They didn't just read the Bible on their own and figure out what it says and just go with that. They read scripture communally. And I think having other people to be in community with that can help you. Usually when you're in counseling, you're stuck inside your head. You have some problem you can't solve. So getting somebody that's not inside your head, that has a different perspective, has different giftings, different experience than you, is it's an expression of of how he's made different people different. And he's given us a gift of other people to help us.
Yeah.
Doing it alone isn't working for you. So let's try something else.
If you're struggling with issues, the last person you want to go to, but this is what everyone does. If you're getting a divorce, who do you call? All your divorced friends. That's terrible. That's the worst thing you can do. You always want to talk with someone who is not in that current situation, because the minute you start telling somebody your issues, within 5 minutes of that, they can tell you this is where it stems from, because they're not in it. You can't see the problem if you're in the problem. But if you're outside of it, you can address it a lot quicker. And then also, it's biblical. You take counseling because it's biblical. James 5:16 says, "Therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed." So counseling is biblical. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of defeat or that you couldn't do it on your own. It's not a bad thing. It's a biblical thing.
Yeah.
Well, Laura and Alex, if you were trying to hype it up and pitch it to gaining additional counselors, could you answer the question of, I have benefited from counseling others because?
I'll start with that, I guess. I've benefited from counseling other people just because it's also a way of just giving back to your community. It's helping me too. You can see changes in people and you can see the need, and you can see just when they're like, oh, like a light bulb almost. And they're like, thank you for that. Like they will, and they do that. It's just beautiful to see these people grow in their faith and, their struggles, knowing that you're able to just walk with them through that.
Laura?
Similarly to Alex, it is rewarding because you go through life and you see a lot of people that are struggling with things that aren't, motivated and aren't willing to get help. And that's really difficult to watch. And then when you have people coming and you see them growing and making positive changes in their life and doing the things that God wants them to do, that is very rewarding because you got to be a part of that.
Is that what you were hunting for, Seneca?
I think it's wonderful. And my answer to that question is pretty much the same as you guys. Providing Christian counseling to people has helped me grow in my work towards Christ. In the progressive sanctification process, there's nothing like walking beside someone else, and God will point out so many things in my own life based on the situation that I'm helping somebody else work through. It has helped me grow towards Christ in a way that would not otherwise be possible.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Laura, Alex, and Seneca. What's the website?
Our website is christiancenteredcounseling.org.
Okay. And the email address was christiancenteredcounseling@gmail.com.
You can access our intake forms if you're wanting to get counseling through us, through our website at christiancenteredcounseling.org. They can directly email the email address, but they'll end up getting rerouted to the website. So you might as well start there, in my opinion.
Okay.
Mark, one last thing I'd like to say. I'm extremely proud of everybody on the team. Anyone who's a part of Christian Centered Counseling, I could not be more thankful and proud of. But none of our efforts would be possible without the UCA. We all somehow got connected because of the UCA and its core mission. It has united us across our nation so that now we can serve others across the whole world.
If you do feel led to help them out, they are a 501c3 organization, which, get out your number 2 pencil.
All right, ready.
A 501c3 in the United States is a designation of a consumer product organization that specializes in 3-way side-by-side comparisons of variants of popular Levi brand blue jeans. B, an organization which operates as a secret extension of the U.S. government, receiving its orders from the globalist elites through neural implants. Or C, an organization recognized by the U.S. government that is intended to help others and not make excessive profit for its directors or owners, and for which charitable donations can be used as tax deductions, provided the organization maintains its 501c3 status by not lobbying politicians or participating in political campaigns.
Yeah.
So, if you got that correct and are led to contribute, send your donation to Christian-Centered Counseling, P.O. Box 335, Whiteland, Indiana. That's one word, Whiteland. The events page listing is the same as last time, so just a reminder that there are events coming up in New York, Indiana, and Tennessee. You'll want to go check those out. I also spoke with John Schoenheit of Spirit and Truth, the ones that are doing the Israel tour at the end of April. As of last week, there are only a few spots left. Learn about these events at UnitarianChristianAlliance.org/events. So, a reminder, I am willing to help if you are interested in podcasting. And in episode 64, Where We Stand, I started a segment on an effort with my brother Alan and Gavin Woodard, a project to turn Alan's short daily morning program on Facebook into a podcast. So here's an update. When doing a podcast, it's critical to have a clear sense of what you are doing. These are the questions I had my brother answer. First, why am I starting a podcast? Second, who is the audience? And third, why should they listen? What's in it for them? You need to be able to answer these clearly. There are tons of podcasts out there. You need to know what your podcast is doing within that mix. Think of your audience as a set of people with specific interests, needs, and preferences. If you know who they are, you can keep them in mind as you produce your podcast. They will find and follow your podcast because it speaks to them. It resonates. Once you have them interested, you don't want to change direction entirely and disappoint or confuse them. They keep coming back because they appreciate your podcast and they know it applies to them. So here are Alan's answers to those questions. Why am I starting a podcast? Alan says, I believe there's a need for a simple, concise, and practical biblical devotional on a daily basis. Who is the audience? Alan answers, the congregation I pastor, along with extended family and friends across the country. And then, what's in it for them? He answers, this devotional is intended to take small sections of Scripture and throw them up against our daily life in a way that sticks and touches a life need. All right, that makes sense. Off to a good start. One of the UCA conference sponsors was Williamsburg Christadelphian Foundation. They have a podcast for their community called A Little Faith. Thanks to the connections of Leah Anderson, our recent addition to the UCA board, I was introduced to Levi Gelino, the host of that podcast. The result? Well, I'm a guest on the January 24th episode, 2023, and Levi really digs in and grills me on what sort of shenanigans we're up to over here at the UCA. Okay, no, it was a great conversation. I've already met some new Christadelphians because of that episode. It was a joy to visit with Levi. And as it turns out, he's got some interesting stories of missionary work related to Williamsburg Christadelphian Foundation, including something about an impromptu picture book Bible. You'll get to hear about that soon on this podcast. Thanks, Levi. Oh, on the same topic of me being interviewed, Tom Hoosty from episode 55, Meant to Be Understood, and who I had on stage with me for Community Night, episode 61, he's started a website and YouTube channel called Unitarian Anabaptist. He asked me if I would answer a few questions on who Jesus is, specifically according to how I understand and experience him. I did, and now there's a 4-minute video of me on his channel. Tom has gone some interesting new directions later in his life. I'm pretty sure that a few years ago, Tom didn't see a YouTube channel on his radar. And as announced last episode, it's time for the mailbag. Shauna from Canada writes, "Hi, Mark. Thanks for all the work you do to help maintain the UCA directory website. This is a great tool, and I hope to meet other Unitarians on here in the future. In a nutshell, I had been unlearning a lot of mainstream Christian ideas over the last few years, and I stopped being so afraid of my current views being wrong. I had finished trying to defend the Trinity to my Muslim friend, and I recalled that my pastor once mentioned in passing that he was unsure about the Trinity. I realized that this was one of the doctrines I had held to that I was told I shouldn't expect to understand with my human mind, and that it was non-negotiable. So I YouTube searched something like Trinity false to see if other Christians believed it wasn't true, and why. I found a Sean Finnegan video that laid out an interesting case. Then I decided that if the Trinity was true and was something we were expected to believe, God would make it clear in His Word. So I pretended I had never heard of the Trinity before, read the whole New Testament in a few days, only looking to see who the Bible said Jesus was. Not only did I find no clear explanation of anything remotely close to Jesus being equal to God or being fully God, fully man, instead, I found countless clear verses stating Jesus was human, less than God, given authority by God, and actually, Jesus has a God. I realized if you don't already start with the conclusion that the Trinity is real and twist all these verses to fit the doctrine, you'd come to the conclusion that Jesus is a human inferior to God. Mark, here's a question. What do you think about Unitarians going to a Trinitarian church? For me, I don't think I could feel a part of the community. I would view them as people to enlighten, and they would view me as a heretic. But even if they didn't view me that way, I would likely always feel like an outsider that wants to save them from the delusion, though I can't tell if it's prideful to think that way. Well, thank you for the question, Shauna. Unitarians going to Trinitarian churches? Well, this is an ever-interesting conversation topic, replete with a spectrum of opinions. So here's what I currently think, and this is my short answer. If you believe it's where God wants you to be, then attend. I think this decision should be soaked in prayer and seeking. For one person, God may be blessing them with a lot of patience to deal with the situation. For example, God may know there's a dormant group of people in some fellowship who all share similar misgivings on the Trinity, and He's working to get them connected. Basically, God may be working out something interesting, and if He wants you there, who am I to say get out? I'd love a Boolean, black and white, unambiguous answer to this question, but I don't think that works here. Some groups are Trinitarian on paper, but barely make it a point in their teaching. The people probably think of and talk about God and Jesus in the same way we do. No surprise, it is how the Scriptures talk. I could see being reasonably comfortable in a group like that. Other groups will aggressively position themselves as the keepers of the central Christian truth, the last bulwark against heresy. And that makes for problems. See episodes 13 and 14 with Kevin George for how the independent fundamentalist Baptist groups fit in here. It's amazing. So that wide variety of situations within the churches is why I say this. If you can detect God's leading to be a part of a Trinitarian church, then do it and keep an eye out for further direction. If things change and it doesn't seem right anymore, be ready to move on. Yeah, I know, it's a bit wishy-washy, but honestly, I don't resonate with people who make bold declarations of come out from among the pagans, seemingly unaware that groups differ widely in their teachings and their emphasis. The recent surveys of evangelicals attest to this. They are often very poor Trinitarians. I'd probably get along with many of them. Now, as for your role there, feeling the pressure to convert them, I get that. I have friends who invite me to their church events and gatherings. What I have found is that being patient and not pushing it has helped people to get to know me. Here's what happens if they don't know me personally. The moment they detect me to be heretical, they will plop me into a mental bucket of people who, at the least, should be kept at arm's length, and at the worst, should be rejected and avoided entirely. The countermeasure to falling into their persona non grata bucket is that they might know, respect, and appreciate me as a fellow Christian. And that takes time. Is my goal to tell them they are wrong, or better, to tell them I am right? Or is the goal to maintain an honest, conversational relationship? I think the goal is the latter, at least with the people that I'm close to and have the opportunity to regularly interact with. Thus, sometimes I hold my tongue. I step back from an argument because I want the best long-term result, not because I'm hiding or scared or I've decided that truth doesn't matter. Now, I may have a different approach in different circumstances, like if I'm with someone who I'll only see for a short while. So again, it's not a single or obviously simple answer. Always wrap your thoughts in prayer and trust God to provide wisdom and opportunity. Shauna, thanks for the note. Do you want to try out the mailbag? Write podcast@UnitarianChristianAlliance.org. Also, I do have a podcast newsletter. Along with each episode, in your inbox, you get some extra thoughts from me. Those who get the newsletter are like the inner circle, my close confidants, my heretical minions ready to do my theological bidding. Insert menacing laugh. Thank you, Seneca, Laura, and Alex for a fantastic and encouraging episode today. Who knows how many other great ideas are out there, rolling around in someone's head, just looking for a team to make them a reality. You three are a case study in the power of finding others who share in your vision. I appreciate your humble spirits and your love for our community. May God bless you in your truth pursuits. I hope this podcast serves you well. In further correspondence with Shauna from Canada, I've learned that her former pastor, who is no longer pastoring, has also recently come to the same conclusion as Shauna, that God is one and Jesus is his human son, the Messiah. He and Shauna and a few others now get together weekly for fellowship and study. Shauna, my prayers are for continued fellowship and growth for you and your friends.